Hello everyone. Today's lesson is on measures of central tendency, and that will be on weighted arithmetic mean, combined mean, and mean of grouped data. So let's have weighted mean. Weighted arithmetic mean is almost the same as that of arithmetic mean, just that for some data has more points contributed to the mean. Uh, there are cases wherein you put more weight to a particular observation. So our weighted arithmetic mean, is equal to W sub 1 x sub 1 plus W sub 2 x sub 2 plus W x sub 3 W sub 3 x sub 3 plus and so on to W sub n x sub n all over W sub 1 plus W sub 2 plus W sub 3 plus and so on to W sub n, where your x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, and x sub n are n observations, and W sub 1, W sub 2, W sub 3, and so on to your W sub n are allocated weighted mean. So you can also write that in general form as weighted arithmetic mean is equal to the summation of the product of W sub I, x sub I, where I is equal to 1 to n, all over the summation of W sub I, where I is equal to 1 to n. Or simply you can write that as summation of Wx over the sum or summation of W. Let's have some examples. A student obtained 40, 50, 60, 80, and 45 marks in math, statistics, physics, chemistry, and biology, respectively. Assuming weights 5, 2, 4, 3, and 1, respectively, for the above mentioned subjects, find the weighted arithmetic mean per subject. Now, I want to show this on a table so that you will be able to understand very well this problem. So let's have a table for that. Subjects, you have math, statistics, physics, chemistry, biology, and then the marks obtained per subject. You have 40 for maths, 50 for statistics, 60 for physics, then you have 80 chemistry, and 45 for biology. And the weights of each subject is 5 for maths, then you have 2 for statistics, followed by 4 for physics, then chemistry 3, and 1 for biology. And you get the sum of that is the summation of your W, which is equal to 15. Now, what about Wx? That is just the marks obtained times the weight. So, when you multiply 40 and 5, you have Wx for your math, which is 200. And then you have 50 and 2, that gives you 100. And then you have 240. And for chemistry, you have 240 also. And then for biology, you have 45. Now, if you get the total of that, that gives you 825. Now, with your summation of W and the summation of your Wx, then you will be able to compute the weighted arithmetic mean, which is equal to weighted arithmetic mean is equal to the sum of Wx over the sum of W, which is just equal to 825 over 15, and that is 55. Hence, the weighted arithmetic mean per subject is 55. Now let's have combined mean. When you say combined mean, we have two or more group of data. So in this case, for example, there are two sets of observations. So you have two groups with different sizes, with different means. And here's a table to show that. So you have group 1, and then the measure in size and the mean. So you have n sub 1 for the size, and your mean is x bar sub 1. And for group 2, you have n sub 2, and the mean is x bar sub 2. So combined mean or composite mean can be written as x bar is equal to n sub 1, x sub 1 plus n sub 2, x sub 2 all over n sub 1 plus n sub 2. And then if the number of samples or groups is increased, or there will be more than 2, then you can just have to add more. So you have n sub 3 plus x sub 3 plus and so on. So it depends on how many groups you have there. And let's have example. So the mean age of combined group of men and women is 30 years. If the mean age of group of men is 32 and that of the group of women is 27, determine the percentage of men and women in the group. So you are actually getting how the percentage of how many men in this group and how many women in this group. So our combined mean is 30. So for solution, you have to let n sub 1 be our number of men and n sub 2 be the number of women or the size. And our combined mean is 30, so we'll just carry that out. And then let's make a table so that we will be able to have a clear picture of our problem. So you have here size and then the mean given here. So our first group are men, our second group are women. So the size we let is n sub 1 for men and n sub 2 for women. Given that the mean for men is 32 and the mean age for women is 27, and our combined mean is given as 30, right? So let's have our formula. Combined mean, which is equal to 30, is equal to n sub 1 x sub 1 plus n sub 2 x sub 2 all over n sub 1 plus n sub 2. So what we will do here, we'll just substitute all the values here, your mean, your x sub 1 and x sub 2, so that what's make it 30 is equal to n sub 1 times 32 plus n sub 2 times 27 all over n sub 1 plus n sub 2. And then we simplify that further, so you can rewrite that as 30 is equal to 32 n sub 1 plus 27 n sub 2 all over n sub 1 plus n sub 2. And then we can do the cross multiplication here. That's why we have 30 n sub 1 plus 30 n sub 2 is equal to 32 n sub 1 plus 27 n sub 2. And then combine like terms here, so you will have 2n sub 1 is equal to 3n sub 2, or you can rewrite that as n sub 1 over n sub 2 is equal to 3 over 2. And this is just plain ratio and proportion, so that the percentage of men in this observation is equal to 3 over 5 times 100, which is equal to 60. That's why we multiply it by 100, because we are getting the percentage. And then of course with women is 2 over 5, which is equal to 40%. Then let's have mean for grouped data, or mean of grouped data. So for grouped data, we use class mark to represent each class or class interval. So what is a class mark? It's just, if you still remember our lesson in frequency distribution table, we get the class mark by adding the lower and the upper limit and divide it by 2. So for this case, you have x sub 1, x sub 2, x sub 3, and so on to x sub n be the class mark with respective frequencies f sub 1, f sub 2, and so on to f sub n. So that the mean of the data above is given as x sub 1 times f sub 1 plus x sub 2 times f sub 2 plus x sub 3 times f sub 3, and so on to x sub n times f sub n, all over f sub 1 times f sub 2 times f sub 3 plus, and so on to f sub n. Or you can have the general statement for that, or the general formula. You have mean is equal to the sum of the product of f sub I x sub I, where I is equal to 1 to n, all over the sum of f sub I, where I is equal to 1 to n. Or simply you can say that the mean of grouped data is equal to the sum of fx all over the sum of f, or the summation of f is, or you can rewrite that as the sum of fx, or the summation of fx all over n, where n is the total frequency. Then let's have an example here. The table below shows the weights of athletes. Find the average weight of the athletes. Now, so you have weights in kilos, that is our class interval. The number of athletes, that is your frequency. So we need to have a column for your class marks, and then of course the column for your class marks times your frequency. So let's have that. So what you have here, your weights in kilos, or your class interval, and then you have the number of athletes, and you try to add that will be the sum, or your n, which is equal to the same as your summation of your f, or the sum of the frequency, which is equal to 100. Now, your class mark can be obtained by adding the lower limit to the upper limit of each class interval divided by 2. So for 60 to 62, that will be 60 plus 62 divided by 2, that gives you 61. And then for the second class interval, you have 64, and then you have 67, then you have 70 and 73. Then of course you are going to multiply your f, your frequency, and your class marks, so that this will be 305, and then followed by 1152, and then 40 times 67, that gives you 2,814, and then 27 times 70, that is 1,890, and 8 times 73, that gives you 584. And when you add all of that, you will get a total of 6,745. Now with this summation of your f of x and the sum of your f, then we can use the formula for mean for grouped data, sorry. So you will have mean is equal to the sum of f of x over n, which is just equal to 6,745 over 100, and that gives you 67.45, and that is now the average weight of the athletes. Then let's have another example. The mean calculated from the following distribution is known to be 67.45. Find the value of f sub 3. In other words, we do not know the frequency of our third class interval. So we want to find this out, given that the mean is 67.45. So let's make a table for your class interval, and then let's find out what else we need to have in our table. So you have class interval, and then the class mark. So we have this. We just had the same. Our problem is almost the same as our first problem. So we have the class marks 61, 64, 67, 70, and 73. And then of course the frequency is given as 15, 54, f sub 3, 81, and 24. And if you're going to add that, you add all the numbers here, and that f sub 3 should be added as well. So that's why we have this. And then what is D? D is obtained from x minus a over I. Now what is your a here? A is the class mark, okay? So A is the class mark of the class mark where your mean, which is 67.45, is located. Okay, so the class mark where the mean is located, the mean is 67.45, so that the class mark, your A, then is equal to 67. And to be able to get your D, we must know our I. In this case, 60 to 62, the class size is 3. So we have 60, 61, 62. So your I, the class mark of the interval, class interval where the mean is located. Okay, so since your mean is 67.45, so it's somewhere here, therefore your A is 67. And then X, your X is your class mark. Your I is equal to 3, so this is the class interval with class size I, which is the class size, okay, which is equal to 3. So that when you compute D for the first class interval, then you will have this one should be 61 minus your A is 67 all over your I, which is equal to 3. And that gives you negative 2. You follow the same process here to get D of the rest of the class intervals, so that here you will have 64 minus 67 over 3, and that gives you negative 1. And then of course this is 0. Then you will have 1 and 2. Now, after you have obtained your D, you can now have your FD, or the product of your frequency and your D here. So 15 times 2, that gives you negative 30. And then this one is negative 54. And this one, of course, is 0. And then you have 81. And then you have 48. Then what is the sum of your FD? So you have negative 30 minus 54, or plus negative 54, that is negative 84, plus 0 plus 81, so that gives you negative 3, plus 48, so that gives you, the sum of your FD is equal to 45. Okay? Now we use this and this one to find our F of 3, because our mean is given as, the mean here is 67.45. Okay, so let's move on. So we use this method to be able, this is an alternative formula to find the mean. So mean is equal to A plus the quantity of the sum of FD over the sum of F times I. So where A is the class mark of the interval where D is 0, so the class mark, your A is given as 67, and then your I is your class size, which is equal to 3, and then of course you know what is D already. And then let's have that. So what you will do here, from the problem, you have this as your mean. Then we plug in all the informations there. So you have, what is given is, you have A is equal to 67. Your I is equal to 3. The sum of F is equal to 174 plus F sub 3. And then of course your sum of FD is equal to 45. Now we will just plug in all this information in our formula, substitute that to our formula, so that will be we will have, so it will be 67.45 is equal to 67 plus, what is the sum of FD? That is 45 all over 174 plus F sub 3 times 3. And then you simplify that, so you will have 0.45 is equal to 45 times 3, that is 135 all over 174 plus f sub 3. And then we do cross multiply it. Okay, so let's have some. Now, where did we get this 0.45? That is just taken from 67.45 minus 67. Okay, so this one is 45. And then you can cross multiply that. So what is left is you will have 0.45 times 174 plus f sub 3, which is equal to 135. Or you can simplify that further. You can, let's have this. You can have 174 plus f sub 3 is equal to 135 divided by 0.45, and that gives you like 300. Okay, so that f sub 3 is equal to 300 minus 174, so f sub 3 is equal to 126. And this is now your answer to your frequency, or the frequency of your third class interval is 126. And that's all for today's lesson. I want you to answer the exercises here. So you have 1, 2, and this one, and the last one here. Okay, so I want you to write the answers of these exercises in your notebook. And this serves as your homework for this week. Thank you very much. See you.